The first painting I want to show you is the Chinese bamboo, and the reason why I choose bamboo is because it has many great qualities. In Chinese, it symbolizes a few things. So the first thing is strength, flexibility, prosperity, and also modesty. It is a very strong material. In Hong Kong, we use a lot of them, bamboos, to do the scaffolding for building buildings. And it's very flexible and it bends quite easily. It represents the ability to adapt to very harsh conditions. And it is always evergreen. That's why it represents prosperity. And lastly, it represents modesty, because yes, as you know, that bamboo is hollow inside. So it represents the character of being humble. Now, before we start drawing, it is also important to understand the anatomy of a bamboo. So on your handout, page 2, you will have some information about the bamboo's anatomy. So as you can see here, this whole thing is called a main bamboo stem. And in the stem, it is divided into little sections. And this is called the internode. And this is the node. And from the whole main stem, there is a branch that grows from it. So you can call this, where the section is the branch node. And of course, there are bamboo leaves that grows from everywhere around the main stem and also the branches. Okay, now let's get ready to use the practice paper. So what I have is just a standard A4 practice paper. Make sure that it's not very thin, because it will bleed with the ink. Now I am gonna show you using a sumi ink, which is a black ink, to create this some, you know, like the Chinese bamboo. Now, but before that, let's do a little bit of like basic strokes, just to get an idea for those who are especially beginners. Now I'm using a pointed nib, and I'm using an oblique pen, and I just dip it into the ink. And what you can do is you can press onto the pen holder, which will transfer the pressure down to the nib, allowing the nib to open. And you come down like so. And you will notice that my nib is pointing this direction. I'll do one more time. And you add pressure. And you create a thick downstroke. Now, if you point the nib to another direction, like to the left, you press, the nib will open and come down nice and smoothly. Press, and you come down again. Now, in order to create the thin lines, you can just, by moving downwards without adding any pressure, like this. Now, if you add pressure, it will just get thick. But to practice a few strokes without adding pressure. Okay. Now, same thing is you can move to this direction without adding pressure. It will create a nice thin hairline. Now, you can refer to your handout, page 3. We'll be learning to draw some leaves, the bamboo leaves. So the first, you can just start thin, thick, and back to thin in a curve, like so. One more time, thin, thick, and thin. You can think about the pressure as 0, 100, and back to 0. You can also move to another direction, for example, this way. Now, if you observe bamboo leaves, most of them are going downwards. Okay? Now, if I demonstrate with my hand, basically, this part is the paper and this is my fingertip that adds the pressure. It will look like this. Slowly adding pressure and then releasing. And I always say to my students, it's kind of like playing Tai Chi. You know, you push and back very subtle, very gently. Okay. Now you can combine the leaves together. So in bamboo leaves, there are lots and lots of them. So they can be like right next to each other like this. You can make it longer and one shorter. You can do other direction. So notice that my nib is pointing the other way. Okay. Now another way to draw the leaves is by adding a thin line first to create like the branch. So you can have this and change direction. Notice my nib has changed the direction. So I'm going this way and I change and pull. You can do also this direction, going up and change, going up and change. So these are different methods you can draw the bamboo leaves. Now in Chinese painting for bamboos, there's always they always use this like pattern which looks like a claw. So you have one, then on the left and on the right. Start again from the center, left and right. Now sometimes you can also add a very thin hairline next to the leaf just to create some sort of like shadow contrast with light bouncing on this area, like a reflection. Now I can use the claw, free, and then you can use the change of direction version to add more leaves. Now if you want, again, draw a very thin hairline on some of the leaves to create this lovely reflection. Now I'd like to try drawing out some branches. So for branch, you don't want to make it a straight line because in nature nothing is really like completely straight. So you want to do a little bit slight curve, and you can do a secondary branch. Now once you have a secondary branch, you can draw the leaves from here as well. Okay, draw a branch. This is like a suggestion, a reference, so you can just follow to come in. If I have another line here, you can turn the page a little. Okay, like so. Now whenever you have branches, you can see it kind of forms like a V shape. So you have left, right, left. On each sub-branch, you can add a little bit more left and right. Left. Okay, you don't have to have exactly the same pattern, but this is a quite good way to just remember. You can pull and create your claw. Okay, kind of thing like this. You can use this as a guide to do the change of direction, like this. Now, we will be learning how to create a thicker branch. It is the same concept, but we're just going to add a little bit more pressure so you can draw a little bit thicker line on the left, on the right. If you want to add extra branches, you can do that. And you just draw the leaves by pulling it from these branches. Now, as I said, nature, there's nothing exactly the same. So you can have like, you know, some bigger line, thicker lines, some are like thinner and shorter. Like this. Okay. Now to draw the main bamboo stem, you can use more pressure on the nib. So first you press, you come down with the same pressure and release. Then for the section here where it's divided, you can draw these lines. Just move it like this very lightly. Another one, draw the line. Now we want to make it slightly bent. Okay, like this. You can make it a shorter one. You can change the knot into this. So if I make it bigger, it's like press, horizontal line, and press. Draw, press, horizontal line, and press. I'll speed up a little bit, like so. So you can you can change between like drawing the lines like this, or for this, for the section where they intersect. Okay. Now, if I want to make the bamboo even thicker, I can add more pressure. Now, I'm using a flexible nib. This is a Leonard extra fine, Leonard Principal extra fine. It's really flexible, so I can press more, and you can see how wide that it opens. Now, what I like to do is I can add the top, kind of like a Roman capital I, like that. And I draw the line to represent the intersections, and I do the same. I will press really hard, and I draw this corner, which is like a triangle. Okay. Press really hard, like this, so on and so forth. So do the last one. I like to do about 4 sections. I think it's nicer. 4 to 5 is a good number. Now notice that this is a lot thicker. You can also add just a line here, rough it up a little bit. Okay, it's also kind of like the little highlights. Now you're probably thinking, these leaves are very, very dark. How do I change colors, right? Now there's a technique. So you can have a separate glass of water. So basically, this is the 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬𝐞 ink. If I just dip it directly into the inkwell, it's really dark. Now what you can do is you can dip it into the water, but before that, you want to use a tissue just to tap off a tiny bit of the 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬𝐞 ink, and then you want to dip it into the water, okay? And the color will immediately be lighter. Okay, if I dip it again, it will get lighter and lighter. So this is how you change color. So for example, the leaves, I'll be doing like a dark one. I'll make it darker again, like this. Now if I want to change the color, I dip it into the water. Okay. Now it's very transparent, but you can always use the black and tap, tap, tap a little bit. It will kind of like blend into this, you know, this area. So when it dry, it will look like Chinese painting. So I'll do a few more to show you. Use the water with some black ink. Okay, like that. And it will dry up very nicely. So for the same for the bamboo, as in the main stem, you can always draw one, change it. Oop, that's a little bit too light. I can tap, tap, tap on it by tapping the darker ink. Okay, and I want to change it to a lighter one. Okay. Now when the water is still wet, you can see this reflection. As long as the water is still wet, you can always tap on it and the ink will bleed to create this darker tone. And that's how you create different tones. Now let's try to create a piece of bamboo together. So I will first draw the bamboo stems. Now the trick is really try not to overthink so much, because the more you think about it, the more rigid the lines becomes. And as I said, that in nature, the lines are not necessarily like completely straight. So I'm just drawing a few stems quite quickly. Now I might want 1 or 2 stems that kind of go across it. Okay, and I draw one tiny one, shorter one here. Now you can add these details or use this method. It's really up to you. Okay. Now I know that this is my ground, so we can add a few lines, just very light pressure. Then I will use the branches. You can add 1, 2. You can break it as well. Okay, just starting with a few, and then you can add the leaves. So 1, 2, 3 version. Usually I will go around with one color first, because I don't have to keep changing the colors. Okay, so I sometimes do some random one on top, because somehow we can just bring it together. Now I will change it to the lighter, so I put it into the water, and then I will add right next to it, or add like so. It's quite dark. Okay, I'm doing this quite fast, without too much thinking about having it perfect. Now, as I said, you can have some really long one. So usually the top part of the bamboo's leaves can be a little bit longer because they've been growing for a longer time, like this. Okay, you could use the change of direction method, and you can start to see it's kind of like coming along with different tonations, right? Like this. Okay, now I'm gonna use a nicer cardboard. You can also use like watercolor paper to create this. I'm changing into a green color. The method is exactly the same, so you will draw, you know, like the leaves by adding water to change colors. But notice that sometimes this is also how I would like to draw, because as I said that if you draw the main stems like really straight, it will look very stiff and not very natural. So I discovered a way to make it even more natural. It's just by starting doing the leaves. So it will look like this. Now this is quite dark, which is fine. I just draw a lot of the claws. Sometimes I pull out these lines. Okay, and I will change it by adding into the water, and hopefully it will be lighter. Okay. And I just draw a lot of them, especially on the top, because I noticed that when you draw more on the top, it looks quite nice because it's a little bit heavier on the top and it's skinny with the bamboo stems in the center. Okay. Now, and by the way, this card I bought it in a Chinese calligraphy shop. And it's really thick, and it doesn't bleed with the ink, which is fantastic. Now once you have some of the top layer, now you can move on to the bamboos, the main stems. Now how it's connected, it doesn't really matter, because you can just start right in the center, change it to a lighter green. You can tap in a little bit of darker green, and back to a lighter, so about 4 of them. Make sure it's slightly curved, right? And then I can have another one that coming right next to it. And notice that I'm making it more fast because it's a little bit more. Now I'm gonna do one bamboo stems that kind of cross over, bending, right crossing these two. And I would just be brave and come down And get some darker ink. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, like so. So it's kind of like going past the two bamboos. You can have one shorter one here. Might just make it long. Now, adding some leaves or some grass as the ground. You can have like a small little growing out here. Now it looks a little bit bare, right? So this is when you add some more. You can add these lines. Maybe add the line first. I'm just using the method that we learned earlier, and then applying the claws. Now leaves gets a little bit smaller, will be prettier at the bottom, towards the bottom. And when it's still wet, you can always adding some darker color to create this different tonations. So you kind of like want to draw like you're not really thinking so much, and that's how it becomes more organic. Okay, some leaves here. You can have some kind of bamboo coming from here. Okay, like this. Now once this is dry, you can also like if you have a Chinese seal stamp, that would be great to add. This is my Chinese seal stamp that my father carved for me. It says 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐧𝐞𝐬𝐞, and I put a red here with the red ink. It looks really nice as a piece, and it just gives some like complementary colors with each other. Now for those who are overseas and you don't have a Chinese seal stamp, you can create like a little with the red marker, you can create your own little alphabet. Now you can just use a red pen. Basically a seal, usually it's a square shape, and you can just do your little own font style. This is 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐧𝐞𝐬𝐞, and it will look really nice as well, like this. Okay. So that's the end of the demo, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And here's some ideas that you can use the paintings to create your own little projects. So I cut out the bamboo and I stick it onto a greeting card, and it looks really nice with the contrast of the red. You can also add some Western calligraphy with the Chinese bamboos, or create some place cards by drawing the bamboos. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you enjoyed it and continue with the practice, and I hope to see you soon.